All right. Some episodes, I know exactly how I want to open. This is not one of those episodes. Because what I want to talk about is sexual shame and trauma in the context of the news this week about that online rape academy. And it's not because this story surprised me. It's actually because what I'm seeing and hearing and reading that this story has stirred up feels really important. And if you've had enough of talking about this, I get it, and I don't want to dwell on it. The reason I'm mentioning the news at all is that I want to change how we hold the thing at the core of this, which is sex and intimacy, culturally, so that we can end all the shame-fueled victim-y mess that men carry around it. And this is the same stuff that makes sex feel dangerous and taboo. It's the stuff that makes women feel afraid to go out. Women feel afraid for their lives, feel afraid to go on dates, and creates men that are capable of committing the horrific acts that we're hearing about all the time. This is important. I hope you'll stay with me. This is Reclaiming the Gentle Man. I'm Dave Lashansky. So when you've spent enough time working with men, something powerful becomes apparent very quickly. It's that most men carry shame around sex. Whether it's how they perform, how experienced they are, what they're into, what they've had to endure. The truth is that most men, the men in your life, the men all around you, hold some kind of shame, pain, and trauma around sex and sexuality. And I'm going to jump ahead and name outright that I'm not making excuses in this episode for the men who are contributing to that website, the Online Rape Academy website. The acts of those contributing to it are plainly horrific and wrong. Do not get me wrong. But like all of the horrible things happening in the world these days, there's just this one refrain that keeps getting louder and louder in my head. And it's this: what did we expect? Because the idea that a site teaching men to drug, abuse, and rape their wives, receiving 60 million visitors in a month, isn't shocking anymore. The idea that the most powerful men in the world created an organized sex ring for children isn't shocking anymore. It is vile, it makes me sick, it's wrong, but it's not shocking. It's what we need to expect if we don't start changing things, changing them at the root. And the reason I'm making this episode today is not about making you sick along with me. It's not about complaining or making you pessimistic about the world. I actually want to have the opposite effect. Because while I find it genuinely tragic that this is what we need to expect nowadays, I also see how clearly we get ourselves out of this mess. This is why I do what I do, because I do see how we can get out of this mess. I do see why we can expect something different if we do the work. Because there's a growing movement of self-awareness that values honestly addressing your wounds. The same wounds that create the shadows that make you act in ways that you know isn't right. I believe we are navigating our way through this mess not by staying up to date on all the news, not by checking the exact number of visitors versus contributors and identifying all the horrible people involved. I believe the way we get out of this mess is to bring men's shame and pain around sex into the light. Because most men, probably every man you know, has practiced operating in his life at a level of secrecy and shame that will always lead us to dark and darker places. Most men know how to pull up the private browser on their window. Most men have the website that gives them that video that they love. Some men get into darker and darker versions of that, and most men spend their days hiding the most intimate parts of themselves, which creates immense problems for all of us. And this has nothing to do with most men being bad or depraved or wanting to do things that violate the sovereignty and dignity of other people like we're seeing in these news stories. Most men don't want to do that. But we were all raised in an incredibly immature culture around sex and sexuality. We were all exposed to porn, horrific porn with strange fetishes that don't make sense and that no person would likely get to on their own without it. Right? We're raised to see those things way before we are sexually mature. And we are raised in environments where even bringing up the topic of sex makes the adults around you uncomfortable. And all of this means that one of the most spiritual, connecting forces that we will ever experience in our human lives has been relegated to masturbating in secret and privacy and silence to more and more edgy content. It is a perpetual downward spiral into an ever-decreasing sensitivity to a man and himself. And more than anything, that makes for way less capacity to connect with anything or anyone meaningfully. The shame that we have been reared to hold sex with has led to isolation, and that leads a man to feel and become more and more capable of horrible things. So what do we do about this? And here's where this is going to get uncomfortable if you're not already. Because for most of us, the work is not about telling other people what to do. The work begins by coming to terms with the fact that your shame and your shadows play into the web we are weaving together as a society and a planet. The work begins with you not because you make people do horrible things. Just to be clear about that, you're not making other people do these things. But the shame, the pain, and the trauma that lives in you that you do not address, that we don't learn to hold with love and acceptance and grace and understanding, directly impacts the ways that we engage with other people. Because it leaks out if we don't control it. As a man, if you want to have great sex, if you want to have beautiful and potent intimacy, it begins with safety. And creating safety has everything to do with your energy and your connection to yourself and how steady you can be. And you might feel like you're having great sex. You might feel like you've got this all under control. This work continues to unfold. You will continue to blossom until you die. You will continue to grow until you die. And every part of you that you judge or criticize or ridicule or banish will detract from the safety that you can create for the people around you. The safety you create and the intimacy you attract as a result of that safety requires you to create safety within yourself first. And what that means is looking at the parts of you you don't want to see, looking at all of what's inside you objectively. You have to look at the version of you that got rejected and never got over it. The version of you that wanted something and was told that wanting it made you bad. The version of you that saw something or did something or had something done to him that he's never told anyone about. The version of you that gets angry for no reason. The version of you that has to deal with grief that you don't really understand. We all have these parts of us. All of us deal with the same stuff. The question isn't whether you have them, it's what you do with the parts of you that you'd rather not have, that you'd rather not look at, that you'd rather not be accountable for. The parts of you that you won't look at and can't own do not disappear. They don't go away because you ignored them or banished them or just hide them from other people. When you're not okay, when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed or feeling lonely, or the grief comes back. The parts of you that you don't like will start to drive, and you won't even see it happening. What you don't learn to own and know and lead inside of you will come to shape more of you than you'd ever want. That anger needs your leadership. That sorrow needs your leadership, which doesn't mean shutting it out. It doesn't mean suppressing it. It means learning to give it what it needs so you can operate in your world with as much agency and sovereignty as possible without it taking over, without it needing you to express it in some way. The whole point of learning about yourself, doing the work on yourself, having support like a men's group or a coach or a therapist while you do it, the whole point of all those things is to get under this, to give yourself ways to navigate the hard moments, the moments when you don't have the resources to handle a big emotion. This is exactly what men for generations have failed to do. Essentially, it's learning what it means to grow up. The men in those videos, engaging in those videos, never did this. And if you're thinking the only thing that's separating you from them is the fact that you didn't do it, you never visited the site, you don't like that kind of thing, it's time to guess again. Because you cannot and will not control what you won't look at. You can try to suppress it, you can white knuckle your life, or you can distract yourself from it, but you will never be in charge of something inside of you that you refuse to see. And while this is the defining feature of the men committing these horrible acts of violence and abuse, it's also a feature that more men than any of us want to admit share. I am not saying this to indict all men. I'm saying this because the only way to end this mess, in small ways or large, is to turn around and meet what is in us first. All of us, every one of us, myself very much included. This work is not easy, and I will not pretend that it is. But it is the most noble work we can do as humans, as stewards of the future we want to create, for the people we love and the children that will follow us. And I also want to say this is the only thing that I've ever seen that actually changes a man. Not the way he performs, that changes him. The man that his partner lives with, the man that his kids feel in the room, the man that can go out and marvel at the tiniest things, even in a moment of high stress, the man who is present to more and more and more and more of his life. The man who, at the end of his life, will know that he has lived it, will have the relationships and the connection to himself and the planet that affirms he made his mark, he existed, and he lived his life fully. Because when your shadows and your shame are in the driver's seat, you are genuinely not leading yourself. It becomes impossible to lead the kind of life that I was just describing. And as a result of that, it makes it really hard to lead anyone else in an honorable way. It makes it hard to truly love anyone else. And if we are not truly loving other people, it is so much easier to hurt them. The intimacy that you really want, the kind that happens out loud, lovingly, in the light, lives on the other side of your shadow work. Not on the other side of trying harder to suppress the parts of you don't like, but turning toward the parts of you that you have spent probably a lot of your life turning away from. You don't have to do this alone, and you shouldn't. Most men who try to do this alone will give up, or worse, they will convince themselves that they've done it when they haven't. It's a lot easier to talk about your sexual shame and pain to yourself than it is to someone who can help you or a group that understands. And if we want a different world for the men and the women and the children and everyone coming up behind us, it starts here. It starts in you. one honest look at a time. You've got this. Let's do it together. If any of this landed, if you felt something shifting in you when I was talking, I run a free workshop on this exact kind of work. It's called The Map to Pain-Free Conflict. And you can find it at painfreeconflict.lovable.app. And if you felt things intensify out of nowhere in your relationship and you could not name why that was happening, it's also similar to this work, but I built a free 3-minute assessment called the Reconnection Code, and it'll show you what hidden shadows are very likely driving your conflicts. And it's also going to give you a simple practice to start seeing and working with them in real time. It's super cool. You can find it at your-reconnection-code.lovable.app. You will also find links to both of these, the workshop and the quiz, in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram at Dave Lashansky, where I talk about this every single day. Thank you for staying with me for this episode. Wherever this finds you, I am wishing you a beautiful day or night. I'll be back in a week.